Hello again, everybody. Welcome back. Are you having a nice time today? I can't hear you. Are you having a nice time? Yes. It's behind you, yeah. He is as well. Took this long to get to Panto. Okay, good. Oh, yes, it did. We have had a few legends on this stage already today. For this afternoon's final main session in here, it's a great privilege and honor to welcome two more absolute legends, not just of the David Bowie story, but of music history to the stage. These guys are amazing. We know them, of course, for their work with David Bowie, but they've done so much else besides. So, first of all, I would like to welcome to the stage a brilliant singer who, for David Bowie, worked on the Young Americans album, the Tonight album, the Never Let Me Down album, toured with him on the legendary Soul Tour in 1974, and the list of great artists that she has worked with over the years is seriously like a who's who of the history of popular music. Please welcome the very brilliant Robin Clark. And secondly, someone who knows Robin very well indeed, because they've known each other for a very, very long time. And if we're talking about legends from the world of David Bowie, I can just say Young Americans, Station to Station, Low, Heroes, Lodger, Scary Monsters, Tonight, Never Let Me Down, Heathen, Outside, numerous tours on which he was David Bowie's musical director, the co-writer of songs like DJ and Fame. It is, of course, and also, he is also a noted academic and lecturer, so it is my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Professor Carlos Alomar. It's fantastic to have you both here, and yeah, welcome to Liverpool. Welcome to the UK. When did you get here?
Thank you.
Were you just here just a couple of days ago you arrived, is that right?
40 years ago.
40 years ago. Yeah.
No, we got here, I think, on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah. Of course, you've toured around, Carlos, you've toured around the UK, of course, with many people, but with David on many an occasion. Mm-hmm. It must be a place where you've kind of have so many memories in different cities around, well, all around the world, but in the UK.
Well, for us, it's not the city, it's the people. When we go on tour, I mean, we're seeing cities from the bus window, out on the plane. You know, we barely get a chance to do anything. Maybe if we stay in one place 2 or 3 days, we can hang out. That's the glorious part of touring, not being on stage, but every once in a while getting out and meeting some of the people that actually go to the shows and do like that, like yourselves, which is one of the reasons Robin and I decided to do something like this. Touring is fantastic because you meet different people. And I think that that's an experience that we all take with us wherever we go. Yeah. So it's really about the people. Yeah. We're people person. You know.
People.
Yeah.
People.
So,
yeah.
You know, we love it.
Yeah. So I guess we've got to do this. We've got to take it right back to the beginning and just kind of get a little context as to how this whole journey began. Carlos, you were playing at the Apollo, right, in New York, in Harlem, around about the time that David Bowie arrived in New York on the Diamond Dogs tour. He was setting up, getting ready for it. And at the time, he was doing a bit of studio work as well. And was that how you first encountered him, basically as a studio session, or did you meet him down at the Apollo?
No, actually, we met because I was the RCA studio guitarist. Uh-huh. And so we got a call because this woman was going to record called Lulu.
Yeah.
Now, we knew Lulu because we saw To Serve With Love. And we, Robin and I felt,
Love Lulu.
Yeah, we were like, that's a great blue-eyed soul singer. And like Robin said, hey, we're 6 degrees of separation from Sidney Poitier. And that's basically, the premise was, we have to go to the studio, as session musicians do. Robin and I are session musicians, and so we're constantly being called upon to do something. We don't even know what it's going to be. But, we end up coming to the studio, and they're asking us for excellence, and that's what we try to do. So we got there, and it was all about Lulu, I thought, until I found out that it was the rhythm section. There's no Lulu. Just a bunch of cats that are going to jam and, have a good time. And out comes the producer. Red hair, pasty skin, 98 pounds. Little weird. But then again, I was a Puerto Rican with an afro, so who was I to say anything? We ended up, look, I played a great session. He was a great little producer. We had a good time. He liked me. I liked him. So I thought the best thing to do was say, man, you look like crap. You need a meal. And so that's what happened. We had been married in 1970. We met him in 73? Yeah, 73, 74. That was around that time.
David.
Yeah, met David. And so the first thing I did is, man, you need to come to our house and get a real home-cooked meal. Robin said, cool, invite him. Next thing I know, he actually came to Queens. I mean, a suburb. I mean, I'm not talking about the city. And so he showed up. Robin made him a great meal, and man, we talked all night long.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically, we talked about R&B. Robin's father was a jazz musician, and so our conversation was all about music and just
And food.
and food.
And food, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was an R&B guitar player, known for like working with James Brown, Wilson Pickett, Chuck Berry, blah, blah, blah. Robin was already singing. We were already at the Apollo Theater. We were already home base. I had a little hit that had already happened. I was with a group called The Main Ingredient. So everything was happening. David was doing The Tower, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was like, hey, you want to play The Tower? Okay, I guess. What's that? And later on, I found out that he had a management. We met his management. They offered me nothing that I could work with because I answered to a higher power. That being said, I had to say no. We had just been married. I'm not about to take a job that's going to not give us what we need. And so we said no. Yeah. The second time, he had gotten the notion that he could go to Philadelphia and get the sound of Philadelphia. Now, the sound of Philadelphia had just gotten the hit, Soul Train. Da, 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 da. No. Who the hell are you? We just got here. Why would we lend our sound to you? We don't even know who you are. Makes all the sense in the world. Ring. Yeah. Man, they said no. Excuse me? They said no. Who said no? TSOP. Who? Oh, you mean the sound of Philadelphia? Yeah. They said no. Okay. Well, what's the problem? I don't have a band. I said, dude, what are you talking about? I'm at RCA Studio. All I do all day long is work with bands and R&B music. Well, he said, okay, let's do it. And I said, I can't. You're too cheap. You got to talk to your management. It's just not reasonable because the money that you're asking, I'm already making twice that with The Main Ingredient. Why would I do that? I'll take care of it. And he did just that.
And he did.
Next thing I know, I was in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Hey, Robin, I got a gig. I'm going to Philadelphia. Can I come down? After that, please, tell them the story.
So I asked if I could come down, because I would always go. He would come visit me when I would go away, or I'd go visit him. And I said, can I bring Luther? Because Luther was our best friend. He introduced us. And he would come with me to sessions, always in hope that somebody would hire him. Somebody would give him a job. So Carlos said, sure, bring him. And we really went to hang out and watch this new artist that we had never seen before. And we got there, and they were playing the tracks. They had worked on some tracks. And Luther and I were sitting in front of the recording board. And Luther leans over to me and he says, it was Young American.
The song Young Americans, yeah.
And Luther says, what do you think of this, Robin? It wasn't even for David. It was just he and I fooling around. He said, what do you think of, all right? Sing that. Sing that. Young Americans, we want the young American. David leans over and he says, let me hear that again.
He had a strange accent.
It wasn't this one. We sing it again. He says, do you mind going in and recording that? We said, sure. Are you kidding? We had no idea. We go in, we record it, we work out the rest of the arrangement. David says, would you mind staying for the rest of the album? And that's how that happened.
And that,
That's how it
and that's a quintessential David thing, isn't it? That he saw something great and he went,
Absolutely.
yes, I'll have that. Thank you very much, and I'd like you to stay. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of that's David in a nutshell, isn't it? And
Part of his talent.
yeah.
To know what he wanted, and as soon as he recognized it, he would grab it.
Yeah.
You know, and implement it into his own.
Some early takes of that song have crept out onto the naughty bootleg circuit, which some of us might possibly have heard. I don't know about you. And they sound lovely, but they haven't got that on it. They haven't got the kind of soul feel to it. And they haven't. And it was. And your friend Luther, and I'm sure everyone knows, but just to absolutely spell this out, this was the then unknown Luther Vandross that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. David gave Luther Vandross his first big break in a studio, and it's Luther Vandross created those backing vocals on Young Americans.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic
David
stuff.
recognized in him immediately that there was a talent there that he had to have it, you know, use it.
Yeah.
Because Luther came with so much, he had all of this in him already when I met him. And David recognized it the minute he saw him, the minute he heard him.
He would do arrangements, and so Luther had a way of looking at the music, and as you know, in R&B music, we have what we call call and response. Does everybody know what call and response is? Okay. Are you ready? Knock, knock. Please. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, Jesus Christ, who are you people? All right, so understanding that, it becomes an essential part that you're able to say something, and instead of somebody saying exactly the same thing that you say, they answer you, and now it becomes part of the verse. It was supposed to be a background part, but they're not singing the same thing you're singing, they're answering you, and now it becomes integral to the whole song. It's no longer a part of the harmonies, it's part of the song. And for an artist to be able to open up his song to someone that's just doing a background part is amazing. It is the issue of being able to look at methodologies. But let me tell you something, it isn't like Luther was able to do that and just take over. David Bowie knew he had an arsenal of people that could do anything. And I'm talking about the fact that we also had the ability to take the people from Diamond Dogs who were still there and mix them with the people from Young Americans who were there. That's David. To be able to not abandon one, but morph it into something else. That is an essential part of some type of manipulation of a methodology. So David, as you've seen in many videos, especially the right video, little dots. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, just ting, ting, ting. But he didn't do one, he did ting, 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 ting. And for them to look at that and say, okay, when you do this, you see this dot, you sing this, man, that's Luther and Robin and Ava and all those other people having to learn a totally different way of thinking and a different methodology that David Bowie just came up with.
Total torture.
It is one of
Total torture.
It's one of the most incredible sequences in any Bowie track, I think. It's amazing. I've listened to it, I don't know how many hundreds or even thousands of times, and it knocks me back every time. You guys doing that amazing, doing right.
Wishing
incredible.
sometimes. Oh no, is that right? Take it all the right way.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yes.
what, yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had never worked in that way before.
Yeah.
None of us had ever worked in that way before. The singers.
yeah.
And David definitely had his plan on how to do it. He left the arrangements up to Luther, but he controlled. He would never give total control up.
Yeah, sure.
So when we got to that song, he said, I already know how, I know you have the parts, but I know the sequence, how I want this to fall, how I want it to land.
Yeah.
It's part of his knowledge of R&B music, the staple singers,
Yeah. Sure.
right? And the way that they attack that song, that's the staple singers.
Yeah.
I mean, when we met David, he already knew. In fact, going back to our house when he got there, oh my God, we had no idea this man understood and knew so much about R&B music. We then realized the obvious fact: the Brits actually studied black music. They actually knew what the hell was going on. Look, if you were a kid and you were able to get your hands on a, Little Richard 45, I guess you were the most popular kid in town. And rightfully so. And so that type of acclamation to R&B music, he understood what it was in essence, and so his ability to interpret that in the studio became very evident to us.
It's one of the things that bonded us.
Yeah.
His depth and understanding of the music. And the vast knowledge of the music.
Yeah.
When he brought that paper out with those dots, which I have a copy of
Oh, do
to
you?
this day,
Yeah.
he said, this is what I want you to sing. And it was just words and dots. There was nothing there to tell me what to sing.
Yeah.
So that's how that fell into place. And it was torture for some. Luther and I got it quickly,
Yeah.
if I must say so myself. And I mean, everybody got it. You hear the final product.
Yeah.
And it's not to be denied. It's one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, me too.
On the on the album.
It's terrific. And it has the most wonderful groove as well. I mean, you guys with and Willie Weeks on bass, right? Who I think was one of your recommendations. Yeah.
Willie Weeks and Andy Newmark.
Andy Newmark,
yes.
yeah,
But
on
Andy
drums.
Newmark was a session musician, well known by all of us.
Yeah.
And Willie Weeks as well. And so,
Dave Sanborn.
yeah.
And Dave Sanborn
especially
on
Dave Sanborn.
sax, yeah.
So when we finally got the ability to get together with those people, David knew, let them loose in the studio. And this is something I tell everybody. If you had Jimi Hendrix as your guitar player, would you tell him what to play? That's the type of mindset you have to go into when you go into these type of musicians of such caliber. Let them loose. They'll work it out themselves. And in fact, that's what we did. We would play the first groove. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, let's go back and listen to it. I like that hit, the drummer, man. When you do it like that, I'm going to catch that. We need a new intro. That's dull. Okay. One more time. Okay, let's go again. David doesn't say anything. He loves it. He watches as you pull apart, put back together, and patchwork this whole thing. And so finally he comes out and he looks at it as a verse, chorus, and a bridge, and he goes, like a Chinese menu, 1 from column A, 2 from column B, and give me that little dessert, for an intro. You think it's difficult. It isn't really difficult, but you can't use the same methods on every song. And that's the brilliance of being with a producer that actually knows what he's doing by not interrupting the flow.
Yes. Well, he was very generous, artistically generous.
Yeah.
If he collaborated with you, that's what he did. He didn't try to control the moment.
Right.
It was, let me hear what you think. We could exchange. There was an exchange. And that's too because he was a delver and a digger, and he was very curious.
Yeah.
So he was always trying to pull something out of you.
Yeah.
And if he inspired it, he did. And if he didn't, it didn't matter, as long as he could extract it.
Sure. Yeah. And those sessions for that album actually ended up, there were a few more goes, weren't there? Because that initial session at Philadelphia was very prolific, and it produced tracks like Young Americans and Right, and John, I'm Only Dancing Again, remake of that track, an amazing number, and various other ones. But then he was still on tour, of course, at this point, and the band lineup changed a little bit, and you guys joined in, of course, and this became the Soul Tour, as it became known. And during the Soul Tour, he was still trying out some new material, and he went back in and recorded some tracks like Win and Fascination came a little bit later, I believe.
Well, actually, we recorded those songs all at the same time. The only things, 2 songs that were recorded outside were Across the Universe and Fame.
And Fame, which were right at the end, weren't they? That's right.
But those other songs were part of the sessions. They just were not released.
Yeah.
What happens is that you have a certain, during those years, remember we had albums?
Back in those days.
Albums are capable of doing about 45 minutes. Should you try to do more than that time, you'll cut through the album and you might not get the quality that you want. Remember the old 78s and how heavy they used to be? You still can't cut that deep because of the way that the technology was offered. So understanding that, you can't put 12, 13, 14 songs just because you recorded them and you think they're great on an album. Play it once and it turns into spaghetti. And so understanding that, we could not release those other songs. They had to be, quote unquote, canned. Yeah. And that means leave them in the can until a much later time when...
Yeah. It's going to be me, and Who Can I Be
Who
Now?
Can I Be
Amazing
Now?
tracks that didn't see the light of day for years and years and years, but they did eventually, so it was...
The fact that we did those, and when we came home, we were so excited to just like put that record, and the first thing was like, Where's Win?
Where's Win?
Who Can I Be Now?
Somebody up there likes me.
These were songs that were like, oh my God, goosebump moments. But like every producer, we get our disappointments when we receive the album, and suddenly the best tracks that we thought were merit to go on the record aren't there. And so, this is one of the things that we face all the time. We think we did a great job, but the record doesn't appear.
Yeah.
Maybe it does later. And it took some time, I think, before that album actually came out. So, in its entirety. So when we heard it, we were very, very glad.
He also had to give the record company what they wanted.
Absolutely, of course.
That's how we got Young Americans.
Yeah, and as you said, this collaboration that came right towards the end, almost as an afterthought, of course, was something which, as well as being a great session, was commercially a good idea because it had a big star on it. And this is the point where we come to. There's a song in rock history whose songwriting credit goes Bowie, Lennon, Alomar. That's pretty good, isn't it? That must be something you're very proud of.
That's not too flaky, I'll tell you that. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that. You had been doing foot stomping on the tour, hadn't you? And this kind of evolved.
Yeah, foot stomping was one of the songs that we did, and it really came out well. We had a lot of fun doing it on the road, but regrettably, some songs just don't have that luster. They lack luster when you try to record them, and they just don't give you that excitement. And so David decided that he would cut it up into what we call a blues format. Fame is actually a blues song. By that I mean a format of a 1, a 4, and a 5. The first note of the scale, the fourth note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. Sounds like this. Bum, 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 bum. Louie, Louie. It's a perfect blues song. Nobody knows it. Anyway, that being said, he took the song and he cut it up. Those are the years when you can actually take a 2-inch master and slice it and paste it together. And that's what he did. He created this very, very simple bass and drum track. Boom, 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 boom. And then, of course, boom, boom, boom. Okay. The trick is, I came from James Brown, and I got slapped really hard by the James Brown crew. Not literally, but in this way. I thought when I was called to do James Brown, I was going to be the only guitar player, as many people do when they get a call and they get hired. Little did I know there were 3 guitar players, and I was one of them. So I got there, and there were these 3 guitar players, and I'm like, whoa, okay. There was an older cat, me, and a younger cat. The older guy, dang-a-da, bam, bang-a-da, The younger cat. Carlos. The older cat. Yo, hold on. Son, where are you going? Calm down. Here comes a slap. Don't disturb the groove. Do you know how long it took us to create that hole? I think that man went down to South Carolina and came back with that slap and just went like, shut up! And that was a lesson to be learned. Don't disturb the groove. So when I got this call to do this job, here are these tracks. There's nothing on there. Just the bass player going boom, boom. Oh, I feel that slap coming already. Boom, boom. What did I decide to do? I hear this song, but I don't hear it as one guitar player. I hear it like 3 guitar players, just the way I got when I was with James Brown. So I'm there and I'm listening to this stuff, and it seems that David recorded Across the Universe to attract John Lennon. So he invited John Lennon to come down to the session to hear Across the Universe as a somewhat tribute to him. Well, he gets there with May Pang, and I'm there, and I'm like, holy smokes. I don't know who David Bowie is, but that's John Lennon. And man, it was cool. And, would you like to play some? We're doing this song, and, hi, Carlos, would you like to play something? And he's like, okay. So they give him an acoustic guitar, and he goes to the studio and kind of pushes in, ding, ding. He doesn't play anything, it's okay. Ding. Funny thing is, though, some guitar players put their guitar down, and when they play, it seems that John had a tendency to play. And so we start playing the tracks a little bit, and David says, we're going to go to dinner. We're hungry. Carlos, do you want to go to dinner? I don't know. Dinner with David Bowie and John Lennon. You know what? I hear my 3 James Brown guitar players playing. You know what? I'm feeling this thing. I'm hearing this. I'm just going to stay here. Why don't you guys go without me? I played my 3 guitar parts, and I laid down Fame. And you know what Fame sounds like? These 3 mad guitar players answering each other in call and response. David came in after he and John Lennon had gone to dinner. He heard it, and John heard it, and he said, that's it. Song is done. Oh, wait a minute, let me add this one little part. Ba-ba-da-ba, boom, boom, ba-dum, ba-ba-da. He always had to have this disruptive thing, this wrench he would just throw in. But it didn't stop the funk. And to that end, this song emerged that was truly mysterious, funky. Where the hell do you get this? And there was this absence of all this other stuff. Remember, we had Love Will Keep Us Together by the Captain and Tennille. We had pop music like crazy. Of course, we had the sound of Philadelphia. But who was this mad Brit playing this funky music on Soul Train? Anyway, I want to say that because there was one little thing that you should know. Later on, we started listening to the tracks while we were in session, and David says, what is that? I said, what? So the engineer starts like, Harry Maslin starts like lowering the tracks until he gets to Lennon's track. And he hears ding, ding. David says, what's he saying? I said, he's saying aim. He said, he's saying fame. I said, he's saying aim. He said, he's saying fame. I said, whatever. It sounds like aim. Sounds like fame. Writing credit is glorious. Fame emerged as one of the greatest hits that he had during that time. And to the credit, as a 22-year-old, first meeting David, to have my name in the middle of David Bowie and John Lennon, listen, let me tell you what it's like being in the supermarket and hearing something like that coming through the speakers. It's just like, honey, that's me. Oh my God, that's me.
It's just what we did.
Right next to the canned corn. Just so you know, it was a shopping spree like I'd never forget. So yes, Fame was definitely the most glorious moment. And listen, we were newly married. Royalties are wonderful.
Yeah, that must have helped, absolutely. And it was, as you mentioned just then, it was the song that finally got David big time in America. He was already big over here, but that was the one that really cracked America for him, and he was suddenly appearing on the Cher and on Soul Train, absolutely, and going on chat shows and becoming a celebrity in the way that he was over here. And that was, and funnily enough, of course, it's a song about how bloody horrible fame is, and it made him famous.
Never believe an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. And that song, it went on to have such a huge afterlife. You played it many times on tour afterwards, as did other, Gail, who was here this morning on stage. She played Fame many, many times. And in fact, because I'm this sort of person and have this sad brain, I can tell you, I don't know if you know this, Fame is the song that David Bowie played live more than any other. No other song did he perform as many times as Fame.
Never knew that.
It goes Fame, then it's the Gene Genie, and then it's Rebel Rebel. Not sure what happens after that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, to that end, we can simply say that collaboration is eternal.
Yeah.
No, truly. Truly.
So let's just go back to that tour then that went up to the. So we're in the autumn of '74, and you're on the Soul tour. You played some amazing places. You went around the sort of southern states. You went to, of course, New York. You were at Radio City
California.
for like a week or something.
Yeah.
Must have been amazing.
Well, we weren't received that. The reception wasn't that warm when we started with David because
they were expecting a different show.
They were
basically,
expecting Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
And I think the first show was in California at the Universal Amphitheater. And backstage, we're excited. Luther, this is our first tour. We'd worked in the studio, and I had done a lot of work in the studio, but my first big tour was with David Bowie.
And with Luther.
And my best friend.
Yeah, and Luther was with you on tour as well, of course.
I mean, and my other best
friend.
friend.
And my bandmates, and my what? And
we're
David.
Backstage, and we're so excited, and we are hearing Bowie.
Get off the stage.
And as they announce us and we walk out on the stage, we step up on the little podium that we're singing from, and I see something red fly past Luther's head. And I started laughing. I couldn't help. It was a tomato. These people started throwing. They came with fruit and vegetables, I guess. they threw.
Thank God it wasn't canned corn.
And we got booed. We were booed. We were booed off the stage, and we didn't get off the stage. David came out and he said, "You have to respect my choice, and by the end of this evening, you will be thoroughly entertained." They calmed down. We did the show, and at the end, standing ovation. Yeah. But the beginning was kind of rough. The beginning was pretty rough.
And it takes quite a man to be able to put your audience in their place so that they can be able to receive those offerings that you're going to give them. Yeah. It's difficult. One of the sayings I have is let go or be dragged. That was given to me by David. Yeah. And these people were really meant to understand that. But Robin did not tell you that they had to do a show before David came on.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Which did not lend itself to everybody liking what they heard.
There was so the band with you guys on vocals, with you and Luther, Mike Garson Band. Yeah. And you did a selection of some were Bowie numbers, some were other kind of soul numbers.
I'm in the Mood for Love. Ava and Jeffrey, Warren Peace. They did I'm in the Mood for Love. I did
James Moody.
People All Over the World Join Hands. Love Train.
Love Train.
It was a mixed bag of music, and it was all songs that David chose. Some of them I was like, what? we're really mixing jazz with
with
but-
Broadway or something.
or Broadway or whatever, Tony Newley, you know. But he was brilliant at that, you know, and they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it.
And didn't you finish with David's Memory of a Free Festival, right?
Oh,
The Sun
yes.
Machine is coming down.
Yes,
All that. Yeah.
yes.
I mean, there's a smorgasbord of delightful songs that you can have, but some resistance is always met.
Yeah.
For David to be able to speak to his audience like adults and say, calm down, enjoy it, and for them to actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about coming of age. It really is important for an artist to be respected, not just admired. Admired you can do from this distance. Respected is a lifelong thing that you have to continue to nourish. And I think that his fan base respected his choices, you know, whether they like one particular song above another or not like any particular album at all. It certainly didn't diminish the respect that they had for the man.
No.
And that's one of the most important things we learned.
And David knew that that was a huge transition for his audience. He knew that they were going to be shocked because no one knew what he was planning. And I had never seen this in my life, but for an artist to come out on the stage and say, respect my choice. These are my people, and I love them. And at the end of this performance, you're going to love them.
Yeah.
And that's just what happened. But he came out and did that.
Yeah.
He said that.
Yeah.
That's integrity.
Yeah.
Remarkable, isn't it?
It's remarkable.
Courageous.
It's
and-
integrity.
Yeah.
It's
Courageous.
courage, and it's love.
Yeah, yeah. And it is fascinating. The Soul Tour is, you know, sadly one of the least well sort of documented, isn't
Yeah.
it? There isn't a great video of it or
No.
anything. But I don't know, have you guys yet had a chance to see Brett Morgan's new film, Moon Age Daydream, which will be coming to a theatre near you in September?
Okay.
I keep boasting about it because I have seen it because I'm very lucky. But it's having premieres and things around the place at the moment. But it's coming out in cinemas in September. Brett was given full access to the Bowie archive, and
fantastic.
it has some footage in it that's familiar, some that is not. But one of the most exciting bits to me is there from Bowie's archive a previously never seen performance of Rock and Roll With Me from the Soul Tour,
Unbelievable.
which is fantastic.
Unbelievable.
I hope I'm allowed to say that on stage. Sorry, Brett. No. No, that is, I believe now, public knowledge. So and it's superb. So it's
I
there,
can't wait.
and people will see it. It's
Can't
terrific.
wait.
Of course, we did see you on the Dick Cavett show again towards the end of the tour, doing Young Americans, and with the whole band there,
Stomping.
and foot stomping as
Yeah,
well, of course, which is a great little moment in time.
Yeah.
And that was all of you guys, of course, and Luther and everyone in
First
in the band.
television show we'd ever done.
And David-
Other than Sesame Street, excuse me. We were the
Oh, yeah.
we were the first artists on Sesame Street
Yeah.
in America.
We were. We actually did the pilot even before it was actually aired.
We did the pilot and the first episode of the first season
Yeah.
of Sesame Street. Me, Carlos, Luther Vandross, a singer named Fonzie Thornton who sings with Brian Ferry.
Fonzie Thornton, and Chic as
who
well, yeah?
Chic
Yeah,
sang
yeah.
with me, and Chic still sings with Chic off and on.
Yeah.
So we got a chance to do that. Jim Henson came to the Apollo Theater, and he chose us. He listened, and he said, I want you to do our first show. And we had no idea what it
Yeah.
was.
That is
From
terrific.
Sesame Street to David Bowie.
Sesame Street,
Sesame Street to David Bowie.
Not
Bowie.
bad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Talking of Chic, I expect you know this fact, but it's another sad little fact that I love that's bubbled to the top of my brain. You know when David finally got his people to stump up an appropriate fee and you came to join him, do you know who took your place at the Apollo? It was a
Rogers.
then little-known guitarist called Nile Rodgers,
Nile,
which is
yeah.
rather pleasing, because
Yes.
a few years later,
Yes.
Nile was kind of implicated, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
What happened was we had, during the Apollo Theater, they do these young kids that were just hovering around. Everybody, if you can make yourself available, there might be a chance that you can get a seat. And this was a very, very important part. When my father died, I decided with his blessing to seek my fortune by going to the Apollo Theater, of course, at the invitation of Luther, but I found myself there. And at that point, the Sesame Street things to happen, and I actually needed a substitute guitar player. Somebody that if I should not be able to take a gig, and I gave him the gig, he would give me the gig back. I mean, understand what that means. You just don't give your gig to somebody that's not, I mean, come on, you just lost it. But now Rogers and I were able to, because of our style at that time being so similar, being able to, you know, when I left Sesame Street, Niall stepped in. And so it was a very comfortable relationship, and like we do, became family. So Robin, Luther, these are the sounds, these are the people that were Chic. It was a band that was created in the studio.
Yeah, there was no Chic.
There was no
Yes,
Chic.
this is pre.
It was, we were called, Luther contracted the session. He called me and another singer named Diva Gray, who had her own records. And he says, come in for Niall and Bernard. We knew Niall and Bernard. And we go in, he puts this track on, and we hear, yowza, yowza, yowza. And I'm, oh, we're doing a novelty record. Okay. Ahab the Arab, one of, you know, in that genre. We put the tracks down, beautiful tracks. Then we say, who is this for? And he said, oh, it's a group called the New York City Band, because Niall had a group, a band.
Yep.
And we said, this record's never going to do anything with this guy on here going, yowza, yowza, yowza. As Carlos said, one day I'm in the supermarket,
Absolutely.
pushing my daughter in the carriage. I had no one to speak to. She might have been 2. And I look at her and I said, that's me, that's me, that's me on the radio. Huge hit. Huge hit.
Massive hit. And the beginning of a great big journey for them, of course.
And we created their sound.
Yeah.
Luther, Diva, and I created that sound. And then we did Dance, 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 Everybody Dance, a couple of those dance, you know, tracks. And from there, Fonzie took over. And he continued the sound. So the sound that Chic wound up having really came not from Chic, but from Luther Vandross, from Robin Clark, from Diva Gray, from Fonzie Thornton, you know.
It's important for the producer to be able to say, like David, hey, that sounds really good. Can you go in the microphone and do that? And so like Nile Rodgers or David Bowie, when you're in the presence of that type of spontaneous talent, you just call upon it, direct it, and release that record, and history. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So the Soul Tour comes to an end. Fame and Across the Universe are added to the album, which comes out in the spring of '75. David's off to New Mexico to shoot a movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth. And then around about the autumn time, Station to Station starts taking shape in LA, right? So this is the next album. So this was a very kind of intense working period for David, wasn't it? I mean, he's made no secret of the fact since that he was kind of not living his best life at that very moment, but he was producing some incredible music. So I think, was Golden Years the first fruit of that new session, is that right?
I don't recall, because we don't really, as musicians, recall what we did because of those same things that you just mentioned. Seriously, though, I'm sorry, I digress. I think that you might consider that being one of the first songs that became a hit because of the release and because it was very popular, and the pop music aspect of that album was obviously seen in that song. But whether it was the first song that we did, I don't remember. Because they really don't... When you're in the studio, there's this weird time continuum, whatever they call it, where you just don't know whether it's day or night.
You're in a vacuum.
Yeah, you're in a vacuum. So look, David had a very special rule. If we're playing something, and look, let's understand, we're talking about a black hole. By that I mean you walk into the studio, there's nothing. What am I going to play? Nothing. Where's the music? Nothing. David, hey man, listen to this. What do you think? Yeah, you mean like this? Yeah, just like that. And so we don't really know what is a record, what isn't a record, because we're constantly revisiting something. You know, this song didn't work out, and we redo the song again. So whether Golden Year was done first or revisited again a little bit later, it becomes very, very difficult to remember exactly the sequence. But the album in itself demonstrated a certain ability to abandon one particular style and go to another. But the album in itself is somewhat strange.
It's a very strange album, isn't it? I think it's a brilliant album, but as you say, the style, it doesn't have an overall style. Some of it's kind of funky, some of it's a bit more kind of European feeling.
In a way,
TVC 15, what is that?
I think that you're right but listen to the way he actually described it. Some of it is funky, some of it is more European. It seems like the genres were being addressed on one album. So let's break down what you might consider this experimental album called Station to Station. Word on a Wing? Really? Experimental? Wild is the Wind? Really, talk to Nina Simone about that.
Yeah.
That's not experimental. Pop, you're certainly right. TVC 15, what, a little robot in a television? I think that's very poppy. And Golden Years.
Golden Years, yeah.
Lovely pop song. I mean, anybody could, Debbie Gibson could have done that song. And so popular music, as it is, had its, who we worked with actually. But popular music at the time, you had to get, I think Robin was right, give the record companies what they want. They certainly don't want you experimenting on something and trying to put it out.
Yep.
So Golden Years and the TVC 15 seemed to be an appropriate a suggestion that an A&R guy would give the record company head, and that actually happened. But when you start looking at the other songs on the album, Stay, as I've told you before, and people don't understand, Stay is John, I'm Only Dancing. John, I'm Only Dancing is Stay. Hey, Carlos, you know that song, Stay? Can you do another arrangement on that? Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Man, that arrangement is really cool, Carlos, thanks. Okay, great. So he goes and he writes some new words. Now, that's brilliant. I mean, give me a new arrangement on a song, and then I write some new words, and nobody understands it's the same song.
Yeah.
This week passed by me so slowly. The days fell on their knees. I got it. Dancing, I'm having so much fun. Dancing, romancing, book down with it now. Oh, come on now. If you sing the song to the other music, you'll get it.
Yeah.
In fact, when you go home, put on Stay and sing John, I'm Only Dancing. Put on John, I'm Only Dancing and sing Stay. Ooh, boy, did he fool y'all. Anyway, I'm only saying. So if you really look at it, the album in itself was, again, this smorgasbord of different genres of music that he was able to put out. But the one that got the true attention was Station to Station.
Yep.
Now, you're not going to believe this, but you got to hear this story. David, did you know that if you do in disco music a song that's over 4 minutes long, you get double? Oh, really, Carlos? How long do you think the introduction to Station to Station is? 4 minutes, or just enough so we can get paid double. When David found out that the new policy was that no longer do you have to do a single that's 2 minutes and 32 seconds, that you can do a single that in disco music can last 10 minutes, well, you got to pay me more for that. And so you find that now, instead of those 10 songs that we talk about before that record turns to spaghetti, he gave you what, 6?
Yeah.
And you all didn't complain, he got you again. He gave you 6 songs on an album, and you thought it was the most experimental thing he ever did. Really? Do you see how glorious it is to be dedicated to someone? It really is, because you took the experiment as what it is. It wasn't about Station to Station. It was about being able to mix all those genres and deliver them to you on one record. And even if you got 6 songs instead of 10, you all were very happy with those 6 songs, weren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Exemplary work.
One of the best albums ever.
Really.
Station to Station.
A little bit for everybody.
Brilliant.
Really.
And the tour that followed, when you toured, you played most of that album and a selection of others as well, is, I think everyone still regards it as one of David's greatest tours. The Station to Station show was just exceptional, wasn't it? I mean, and this was the first tour on which you were fully fledged kind of band leader and arranger, right? That must have been an exciting moment to kind of be the leading the band.
Moments like these, like young Americans, are shared with your friends, your wife, David. And so the experience is not so much going on tour and doing that. It's that you're with people who are family. At that point, we had gotten George Murray and Dennis Davis. We were the Damn Trio. And thank you. Now let's understand, we had Kraftwerk, who David loved, but there was this mechanical rhythm. Well, let me tell you, when you get Dennis Davis on drums, you've got a metronome. When you get George Murray on bass, he's a lead guitar player that plays bass. So you get Carlos Alomar, who this time is playing all the guitars at one time. A bass player that plays like a lead guitar player, and a drummer who's got 8 feet and 12 hands. I'm talking, and let me ask you, what Brit is going around with a 3-piece all-black jazz funk rhythm section? Nobody. That in itself shows a certain amount of, not courage, but forethought, to be able to perceive the essence of what you need and abandon all those things that people told you you're supposed to have. This does not discourage anyone from forming a regular band. If you know you want to form a band, do it. But when David saw the potential of being able to have a metronome type of band, that when we clicked, it was this machine that was just unleashed. And so when we did Station to Station, that Damn Trio, oh my God, David would turn around and just let us, I mean, when we did Station to Station on tour, man, you thought it was long on the record. David just had about 12 packs of cigarettes while he waited. It was unbelievable. And so that particular tour for us was the beginning of the Damn Trio, which again would last for quite some time as David Bowie's means of expression. Because quite honestly, we did all the tracks. And one of the things that I had asked David, please, when we do our stuff, it's just the 3-piece, please. Just like the Spiders from Mars. Just the 3 pieces. No piano. Those in our world were considered lead instruments, specialists. You know, in jazz, you don't usually call well, in jazz, they started doing comp guitar. So you'd have this guitar, chong, 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 chong. The piano player would be like a specialist. He would be a soloist. And so, although he had Mike Garson and all that stuff, I had this particular way of working that was somewhat not aligned with a person with 10 fingers playing all 10 of them at the same time and leading tones that would force David to sing along with what he played. And so in order for that not to happen, there could not be a piano player in the rhythm section. This way, we will create, like James Brown told me, the biggest holes you ever heard. And what created that amazing funk? We created holes for David that when he had to creatively invent his lyric and his melodies, there was no leading tones. There was just this beautiful hole and this vacancy that allowed his vocals to just swim over everything. And then once he had that, then don't let anybody hear it and then call the other musicians in. Lovely idea. Don't let them hear the melody. Just let them hear the bass, drums, and rhythm guitar, and then just play. This is the bridge, this is the chorus, this is the verse. And you know what? They just grooved along with the music. Little did they know that the lyrics were already done, the background vocals were already planned. And this methodology, he would later use for the trilogy and other things, where he would not let you hear the complete tracks that he had to limit your perception of what was needed. Clever. Clever indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, you're talking there of the trilogy, of course, being Low, Heroes, and Lodger, which popularly known as the Berlin albums, although in fact the only one that was completely done in Berlin was the middle one. Low started in France and Lodger ended in New York, and there was a lot of space in between. But those three albums, which David always said later on, he said, you know, you could lose everything else I'd ever done. Those three albums are my DNA, which was an extraordinary thing to say. I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted to lose any of his other stuff, but they meant a lot to him, those albums. It was a incredibly creative period. And 2 Iggy Pop albums as well, in between the gaps. He did 5 albums.
1977 was ridiculous. How do you do 3 albums? Or let's say in 2 years, you do it's, who gets an American rhythm section to record in Europe to import it back to America?
Yeah.
That's the type of thing that you're right. You're not thinking linear so that you don't realize these things are all happening at the same time while he's fighting with a record company to allow him to do such crazy things. This is the perception of a visionary and the fight that a visionary has to have in order to manipulate the concrete aesthetics of a record company who, you know, the record company is just give me what I want and take your money. But David had a vision, and so you're right, the Berlin Trilogy was one of those places where he challenged all of the
and going back to what Robin was saying just now, of course, David revealed afterwards, he said famously, RCA, when they first heard Low, they were horrified, and they said, what's this? Can you do some more of that soul music? Because, of course, by now, that was what they wanted, the stuff that they didn't want before. And that, of course, was David to a T, wasn't it? Of course, he was always, he was way ahead of everyone else. He'd no, I've done that. This is the new thing.
On to the
accept
next.
my, respect my choice. Yeah, and I mean, those 3 albums are just thrilling to hear. Everything about them. And Dennis Davis being so inventive on drums and things. Of course, Tony Visconti brought along a whole load of trick boxes and things to the sessions to create all these amazing new sounds, and so influential in the long run, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Low and Heroes, the sound of those albums.
The little known facts about technology and David Bowie, and even Carlos Alomar. There was a point when rock and roll music would have what we call foot pedals. Jimi Hendrix had a big muff. A lot of people had distortion, fuzz boxes, and things like that, and they were all called stomp boxes. We didn't have those multi-pedal things. No, everybody had one box for one effect, and you kind of do that. When I was doing Station to Station, I was introduced to Earl Slick. I was an R&B guitar player, and as such, all I needed was a nice little clean twin reverb amplifier, which is traditionally used for R&B music. As a rhythm guitar player, I needed very clean sound, no distortion. That's not the way I play, so thank you very much. Then this gentleman by the name of Earl Slick comes in, and he comes in with 2 Marshall stacks. Not a problem. He proceeds to play his 1 or 2 lines really loud. No. I mean really loud. No. I mean 2 amplifiers really loud. And I had my little twin reverb. I appreciate what he was trying to do. And so I thought that the best thing for me to do is to turn down. David Bowie comes in and he says, Earl, could you please turn down? I can't hear Carlos. The point is this. I understood at that point, oh man, I'm in a lot of trouble now. Because Earl Slick ain't gonna turn down jack for nobody. And there's nothing wrong with that, because he's not rock and roll, and I'm R&B. Know your place, Carlos. So what did I do? Say, David, man, I was wondering if when we go on tour, if I could maybe get you guys to get me some amplifiers, because these little R&B amps aren't gonna work. Oh, no, of course, Carlos. It's lovely, of course. Man, he shouldn't have told me that, because what did I do? I went to the Craftsman and I had him give me a 15-inch Gauss speaker in total fiberglass, two 12-inch and a gigantic woofer all made out of metal. I also needed a crossover network that would take the bottom, middle, and in high frequencies and distribute them evenly. I also needed 200-watt amplifiers to cover everything so that I would not have any distortion. Oh, by the way, I needed 2 of these refrigerators on each side, so when Earl Slick got there, can you see it? Earl Slick amplifier, a Marshall, nice. Carlos Alomar amplifiers, straddling. One on this side, 1 Marshall, 2 Carlos. 1 Marshall, 2 Carlos. $655 watts of pure power, all Carlos. What was invented at that time was that I am a studio session musician. I don't do stomp boxes. I want those effects that are in the studio. 19-inch rack-mounted units. There was only 2 people doing that on the road at that time. Actually 3. Frank Zappa, myself, and Todd Rundgren. What I did was I brought studio quality effect racks to rock and roll tours. That had never been done before, ever. The person that brought studio quality equipment to touring was Carlos Alomar. Thank you, Earl Slick. So, again, it shows a certain amount of resourcefulness based on technology and the need to do something based on what you cannot no longer do. You can no longer play a little twin reverb amplifier when you're on a stage of like this. You're only one musician, so you have to rethink who you are, what you are, and what is your delivery system, whether it's business, music, or otherwise. The ability to morph, the ability to change, the ability to have courage, the ability to go into what you don't know about and still feel you can have an outcome that is reasonable became a mantra that I would later use for the rest of my life. It does take a certain amount of money. Thank you very much, David, for having the courage to understand that the need was so great that it created something that was never done before. It didn't matter whether it was in the studio recording, doing things like allowing Visconti to twist time by bringing in certain effects that would do that. Having Carlos, look, when David came to see us, when he came to visit me when we first started, I already knew Jimi Hendrix' Are You Experienced album. I put my fuzz box on and played, Jimi Hendrix for David Bowie. So he knew not only was I a great rhythm guitar player, but I knew every lick that Jimi Hendrix did. And Jimi Hendrix had an afro too. And so the experimentation, all of that stuff, everything like that was part of this blossoming that happened during this period where Station to Station emerged, and we were now in Europe, and we were now in different places that we had never gone there. And of course, Robin came with us. And it was just, by this time, Leah was born.
She wasn't with us.
Yeah. So, and look, during all this time that we're doing this stuff with Bowie, Robin, myself, we're also working with other people. And so it was really important for David to see that these people that he was working with were also, Robin was working with the Blues Travelers and...
Blues Travelers were way after.
Yeah, it's just...
Esther Phillips, people like that.
Yeah, sure.
I did Fog Hat.
Fog Hat, right, yeah.
Just
you were constantly working.
Yeah, I started doing sessions at 18.
Yeah.
I made my first commercial at 18. The man who managed us at the Apollo Theater, his wife played Susan on Sesame Street. Her name is Loretta Long. And she came to me and she said, "Do you want to sing on a jingle?" I didn't know what a jingle was. I said, yeah. I'd love to sing on a jingle.
Yeah.
We get there, I find out it's a commercial for Windex. Okay. I also found out that every time the commercial runs,
Ka-ching.
you get paid.
Yeah.
My mother was mortified because she was like, where is this money coming from? She didn't know. She didn't understand. You know, why is there a check in the mailbox every day? So at 18 years old, I made $50,000 from one commercial. I gave it all to my family.
Nice work.
I gave it all to my mother. Because that's what you do at 18 when you make $50,000. You give it to your mother, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened.
Yeah,
I just, session after session after session after that.
And as the years went on, and obviously Carlos was doing, as you say, you were working with lots of other artists as well, and we'll talk about some of them, but of course you were working with David, you did the trilogy, you did Scary Monsters, you did the 78 tour, you did the huge Serious Moonlight tour, all of these things, and at the same time, Robin, you both worked with Simple Minds, right? This is early to mid-80s.
He sang on the Simple Minds album. What happened to him is what happened to Luther and I. He came visiting.
Yeah.
And they realized that you're married to Carlos Alomar? Didn't you sing? You didn't even play guitar.
I didn't play, I sang.
He sang on the album.
Dulcet tones.
Fantastic. Yeah. Because you guys know, right, that Robin was like a proper member of Simple Minds for one of their most famous periods. For 3 years, and you toured with them, you recorded with them, you're on some of their biggest hits, all the things she said. Those
Hear their videos, Sanctified, Alive and Kicking,
it's just fantastic
Once
stuff.
Upon a Time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I said at the beginning when I was introducing you both that the list of people you've worked with is like a who's who. I mean, I do my best not to bring notes on stage, but sometimes the list is just too long to memorize. So look, guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are some people that Robin has worked with over the years. Okay, we know about David Bowie, we know about Simple Minds. This is the tip of the iceberg, but I've jotted down Kiss, Blur, Chic, we've talked about, Frankie Valli, Al Green, Bob Dylan, Bette Midler, Barry White, Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, Tina Turner, Dolly Parton, Beyonce, and Aretha Franklin. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. And you wonder why I married her.
You know, we always say we took nothing and turned it into something.
Yeah.
The first person who gives you a chance doesn't realize what they're giving you.
Yeah.
And they give you that chance to open that door. And sometimes the door gets open and slammed in your face. Especially as a musician, there are wonderfully talented people who don't get the opportunity. So the gratitude, for someone to believe in you, for someone to give you the opportunity, and they keep giving you the opportunity and keep giving you the opportunity. Yeah. It humbles you.
Yeah.
And then the people, all of you who believe in us, who entrust your taste in us, who let us influence you in whatever way that is.
Yeah.
That's the biggest gift of all time. So, to take just nothing and be able to have a career from that. Yeah. I said to someone last night, Luther Vandross has the greatest Horatio Alger story because he came from nothing. He was poor. We were all poor, but he was poorer. So we were, I have a sandwich, you have a half. We came up that way. So to see that trajectory happen, to see that we were hoping that someone would give us a chance, and then we got a chance.
Yeah.
You can't be more grateful for that, Yeah.
And you were both back with David in the mid-80s, just after Serious Moonlight. He was recording his next album tonight, and you were back in the company for that one, which I think was recorded up in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At that point, I think David was our neighbor, wasn't he?
Yeah. At that point, we had David came to visit us, and at that point, we had moved into a giant loft. I think it was
2,500 square feet in Chelsea.
2,500 square feet. It's like one of those factories that suddenly they made into a loft, and you've got like a disco place you can roller skate in. And David obviously was living in hotels from hotel to hotel. So we asked him to come by. Hey, come by, you're in the city, come by.
He was living in a hotel, and then he moved into a townhouse right down the street from us, and he came to visit. And he looked at our apartment. He said, "Wait a minute. What is this? Well, how much are you paying for this?" And when we told him, he said, "What?" Because it was also a rough time during that period when he was renting that townhouse. And he said, "I can't believe the size of this place." And it had 2 bedrooms. It was huge. 2 bedrooms, bathroom, the layout. A week later, the neighbor next door moved out. There were only 2 apartments on each floor.
Right.
And within a month, he was living next door.
He was
living. He said, "Oh no,
no, you're living large here."
No.
And he was our next door neighbor. Yeah. And look, we had just Robin had just given birth to our daughter Leah, who's right there. Hi, Leah. Yeah. And so we find that little Zoe Bowie, who he was called later.
We called him Joe.
He
wanted to be called Joseph.
He didn't want to call Zoe, Joey. And so the only kids in the whole building were Leah and Joey. And so it became a moment for us as David's friends, collaborators, and neighbors. And it really kind of solidified us with him on a much more private level. And more importantly, sometimes you lose the guise of feeling protected, and so you drop that. And so at that point, we really bonded in another way because there was no defenses in him. He was comfortable. Our children were playing together. I mean, we went through a lot during that. Oh gosh, that was a time when
Lennon got assassinated.
Right, Lennon was assassinated during that time, and David was right next door. So, it was a rough time. I mean, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And so, that being said, the fact that he was our neighbor at that time was really important for us because in the solace that you need during those moments, the people are there, and you feel a certain amount of, and we actually felt very protective over him.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why he moved next door. He was so comfortable. He didn't have to fear anything from us. He had known us for so long. Yeah. So it was almost like a natural trajectory for him to be our next door neighbor. Yeah.
And look, we were still totally vibrant in the New York scene. Yeah. Robin and I and Leah were voted in the top 100, what is it called? The
Hot 100
the Hot
of New York.
100 of New York City. And in this point, it wasn't as a family. Robin was chosen because of what she did in R&B. I was chosen for what I did in rock and roll. And my daughter was chosen for what she did in electronic music. They didn't even know we were a family.
Until the event. We showed up and it's like, you're all a family?
It was it was all reported in another magazine that we were the first family ever inducted into the 100, top 100 New York nightlife people. I only say that to say this. During the time that we were neighbors, man, we partied hard too. We took over a place called the China Club. And man, we had so many jams down there. It was, you can read about it and people have written books about it. And then everybody started coming down. If the Cars were in town, they show up there. Parts of the Stones were there, they show up there. You see people on that stage, which is like Rick Ocasek, Iggy Pop, David Bowie, Carlos Alomar, and Duran Duran. What the hell was going on? This was a different David Bowie, a different comfort zone, a different family man. And so Robin and I were very, very comfortable over the fact that we were not on the road.
Yeah.
And you know something? There's a word that we rarely use. Cherish. Man, you have to cherish certain moments and hold them in such high esteem because you don't get moments like that, not even in hindsight. These are moments to be cherished because you know what? You don't relive those moments. Circumstances don't allow you. You can compare if you want to, but they'll always fall short. And so those moments that we shared together were moments to be cherished, and in such a way, you don't really talk about cherished moments, do you? You kind of keep those cherished moments for yourself for when later on you need something to give you solace. redemption, to give you purposefulness and tell you that everything was all right, that you did the right thing. And so those moments, you might not read about those in magazines. Well, I'm telling you everything now, but these are moments that you have to remember, make relationships, establish yourself, and make you feel like you're part of something that you needed. You can call it family, you can call it camaraderie, you can call it very close associates. But regardless of what you call it, you do cherish those relationships. And so.
And there was a time in David's life where he needed to be around people he trusted and he loved.
And family.
And that were a family. And that he didn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
You know, because there's always that, the worry
Yeah.
of maybe I've let the wrong person in.
Yes, of course.
You know,
Yeah.
and he went through that.
Yeah.
You know, so, because we said, we can't believe David Bowie is living next door to us. How crazy. And now he's knocking on the door wanting sugar.
Yeah.
He did.
And then Coco knocks and, do you have any eggs? Like, this is surreal. This is unbelievable. You know, and our children played together.
Yes, that's
you know.
wonderful. I didn't know that your
Yeah.
children had played. And
Yeah.
talent certainly runs in the family. Of course, Joey Duncan has grown up to become a very accomplished movie director. And yes, and as you have alluded to, I mean, we've got to say your lovely daughter Leah is a very talented musician as
Yes,
well.
she
And she's
is.
here with us, so lovely to have you here.
Leah, stand up.
Stand up,
Leah.
girl. Take a bow. She's still trying to show us how to use the internet. Don't let it fool you. We're just like you.
Now, guys, we've got loads of time left, but I believe we have a microphone somewhere in the audience. Is this rumor true? If anyone has a question that they'd like to put to Carlos and Robin, either now or in a moment, I'm not quite sure what the setup is, but I think someone's on it. So anyway, have a little think about whether you'd like to ask a question. We'll get that microphone sorted out, if we're not already. Here we go, it's happening. This is Holly, everybody. She's our stage manager. She's very good.
Give him hell, Holly.
The reason I sit in this chair and not that chair is that I can see Holly over there going like that at the end of every panel, which is a very important part of it. Otherwise, I just have to go like this all the time, and it looks like I'm bored, which I'm not. So, does anyone have a question now? Or, here we go.
Step right up.
Okay, so would you like to step up to the microphone and go for it?
Did you get to meet Lulu?
Did you get to meet Lulu?
Boy, you are cheeky, aren't you? Man, no. To this day. And you know what? I'm as disappointed as you are.
It's funny, actually, isn't it? That this is, as you said, your very first piece of work with David Bowie, and it's a piece that has never come out. He'd already done one single with Lulu, and this was an early version of Can You Hear Me, which of course became a song on Young Americans, but it's never seen the light of day. I guess it's in a vault somewhere, but how we'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Me too, because I played some really good stuff.
I bet you did.
It impressed David.
Yeah. Yes, we have another question.
I'm Bert Slappenel from Holland.
Hello.
Do you remember you was rehearsing in the Glass Party tour in Rotterdam? Because we went a lot of times to the Hilton Hotel and wanted to see a glimpse of Bowie and the band, you know. Can you remember that time? And
I somewhat do, because Rotterdam was so wonderful, but let me tell you about Rotterdam's nightlife. It'll make you forget everything. And you know it's true.
big night.
No, we had a large time there, but regrettably, all of the rehearsals and all of those things mesh into one gigantic event. What stands out is maybe the two people that are waiting on the side that don't have tickets.
Yes.
That you go back there and surprisingly give them 2 tickets and they don't even realize who you are, and they're able to see the show, and later on they find out who you are. Or maybe it's somebody that, there's always something that makes something special. So we don't remember the rehearsals. This is working. And so we have the greatest of times. We try to remember as many people as we can, but they are events that are so huge that they encompass the whole emotional event, not the one specific. And so as much as I'd love to remember the great times that we've had with everybody that we've met in pubs, backstage, it just runs like you. I'm so glad to see you again, maybe.
That's your autograph.
Thanks for buying me that second drink, too.
Thank you. Yes, we have another question.
Hi. We've met.
Yeah.
First of all, that was fascinating and entertaining and educating, so thank you so much. This was a great hour. I have a question about a guitar player that played with David that kind of disappeared, and that's Stacey Hayden. So I know you played with him on the tour, so if you could just talk about it a little bit, because I thought he was fantastic, but then he just vanished.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Stacey Hayden was the sweetest guy. First of all, he was shocked. Stacey Hayden was a nobody. Stacey Hayden had not played on blah, 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 blah. Don't even look for him as credited. And yet, David Bowie heard him somewhere, and he just put him in a little checklist. I'll check that out later. And he does that all the time. I mean, he'll go to see Frank Zappa, hear his guitar player, and just steal him. And so we met this guy, Stacey Hayden, and he was really cool. He was an amazing guitar player, let me tell you. What we find is that everyone interprets things a different way. When you go into the studio, you are in fact the creator. Anybody that comes after that, listen, just listen to the record, reproduce what they do, and come on tour with me, but you're not the person that created it. Stacey Hayden was able to take those parts and make them like he wrote those songs, like he came up with those parts. He was very quick. And let me tell you, to be able to get the distorted sound that took us forever with Earl Slick, Stacey Hayden was able to perceive what was necessary, and he took that to a totally different level.
And just to let, in case people aren't sure, this is Stacey Hayden played lead guitar on the Station to Station tour. So Earl had played on the album, but then it was on the tour, it was Stacey.
Exactly right. Stacey was there, and we had the keyboardist from Todd Rundgren's Utopia.
Yeah, Tony Kaye, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, it's Tony Kaye.
Tony Kaye was on that.
Roger Powell was the other one.
No, Roger Powell. Tony Kaye was
Roger Powell was
from-
on the 78 tour, that was later on, yeah.
Stacey Hayden was from that big band. Janice? What was it? No, Tony Kaye.
Yeah, Tony Kaye was in, he was from Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So
from Yes.
this, so many years, so many bands. But this particular band interpreted that album in such a way that it was just like every song that was now done had a Stacey Hayden flavor to it. And that's what's really amazing about getting other musicians to play stuff that was already played by other musicians. It's like, if we do a tour and there's horns, we suddenly do a song like, Starman, but it's got horns. Now, when you hear it on tour, it sounds so good, you maybe think, wait a minute, were there horns on that record? Because when you do an arrangement, you kind of do it based on whatever the newest record is, like Let's Dance comes out, it had horns. So now that we have a horn section, we got to put horns on songs that didn't even have horns. Oh man, have you ever heard Fame with horns? Man, that song was like, whoa. And so this ability for David to find these band members and then decide that guitarist is enough, I don't need horns. Those two people sing, I don't need background vocalists. This way of mix and matching things was really started at that time with Station to Station and the Damn Trio. So yeah, Stacey Hayden was merited. And I speak to him, he really didn't, he's retired, he didn't really play like that anymore, and so he had his time, he enjoyed it well, and he was happy.
He had one little brief return with you and with David, didn't he, on that remarkable Saturday Night Live performance right at the end of the 70s. He came back to play guitar on that, didn't he? The one where David did The Man Who Sold the World with Klaus Nomi and Joey Arias on backing and all that. Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, and that incredible suit. Yeah.
When we saw that, we were like, dude, that is like crazy awesome.
And Boys keep swinging with like a chroma key puppet figure. Yeah, incredible stuff. I love that show.
It's crazy.
Crazy, isn't it?
What a visionary.
Superb.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Yes, we do. Step up to the mic.
Thank you for being here, Robin and Carlos.
Thank you.
I've watched many of your interviews on YouTube, and one of the great things, you always seem to be the most forthcoming and down to earth of all of Bowie's collaborators. I want to ask you a question, which I hope you can answer. I believe you're a man of the faith, and you were in close contact with Bowie for several years. what would you say speak to his spiritual journey? What was your experience? Did you ever talk about things of that nature with him? Or? I know this is a very deep thing, but this is a Bowie convention. So hey, if it doesn't come out here, where's it got to come out, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
It's kind of a personal journey of my own.
Sure.
You start. You answer. Start.
Concerning David Bowie's spiritualism, and this is everyone, all of us need spiritual nutrition. But spiritual nutrition comes many different ways. It can come by being educated. Why don't you read Tao? Why don't you read the lectures on the Sutra? Why don't you look at different cultures that are historically much older than yours and have more philosophical substance than we understand that? David was like that. He would read so much that he can really recite from Tiantai the Great of China. He can really recite from different, philosophers. And so this type of spirituality that we look at is not necessarily spirituality because it can be based on an intellectual level. And so what you find is that he had met two individuals who he did not really know anything about. What would you think when David found out that we were at the Apollo Theater, but when he comes to meet us personally, we're Buddhists? That does throw a wrench in there somewhere.
Last thing he expected.
He didn't understand what we were and who we were and how we speak and what we knew and blah, blah, blah. Because when you meet in a musical forum, you speak musical terms. And that's really what's necessary in order to get the job done. But when you're in those quiet moments of inner retrospection and solitude, then the spiritual awakening does happen, and you're in fact right. He did have a spiritual side. But spirituality is not something that you hit somebody over the head with like you have to convert them. That has nothing to do with what he was like. And so the awakening of your spirituality is something that he might be able to give you by telling you to read something. But leading people around by the nose in a spiritual way was never anything that David Bowie ever expounded on, ever. As far as his own spirituality is concerned, we don't know how spiritual one can be because of something called redemption that people take for granted. Not a spiritual redemption, but just yourself. What you're able to perceive as being the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. So as far as spirituality is concerned, as far as David Bowie is concerned, I hardly think that any of us can really get inside the man concerning his spiritual nourishment and how he got it. But I will say this. If you don't care, if you show no empathy, then you will give nothing in return. And that is the part of spirituality that you have to remember is most essential. The ability to give without asking anything in return might be considered a very spiritual way of thinking of yourself and your life. Not expecting is a glorious way of getting everything you want. Is it everything you need? I think that you'll be the judge of that when you receive what you get. What we have found is that one must never look at the conspicuous benefit as being the greater. The greater of the two is the inconspicuous benefit. The most obvious one is the conspicuous benefit, but the one that would nourish your life and support you whole is the inconspicuous benefit. You must look out for that second inconspicuous benefit. In there lies the true meaning of life. Getting what you want is easy. Getting what you need is a lifelong struggle. And that is what spiritual nutrition is all about. Feeding your needs, not your wants. It's a very delicate balance that you have to do constantly. The more intelligent you are, the more options you have. The more philosophies you read, the more philosophical you become. If you want to stay, como se dice, mundial. If you want to stay of the world, if you want to stay of the world, then don't care. Just be reactionary and live your life in a knee-jerk reaction to whatever anybody else does. But you'll find no calmness. Will you ask, was David Bowie a calm man? Hell no. How can you be calm? How can your core not vibrate when you have so much stuff going on, the pensiveness? So spirituality is great when you can take yourself and isolate those small moments for yourself of inner solitude and just calm yourself down for a minute. Can't be spiritual, none of that stuff when you're all up like this. When you've got other people's sound bites all in your head, messing with you at night when you're trying to get asleep. I should have said, I should have done. David showed us one thing. Read. Educate. Carlos, how could you be in Paris and not go to the Louvre? How can you not be in, we went to museums, we did cultural things that we were able to do. He awakened in us that type of spirituality that we kept forever.
And he was a delver. He delved into many things. I mean, one of the first books that David ever gave me was called the Jesus Scrolls. And it's the missing scrolls from the Dead Sea. Really? That's, nobody ever did that for me. Nobody ever, you should read this book. It's going to change your life. The book was only that thick because they had taken whatever scrolls that they had found, the ones that we can't see, and someone put it in this book. And when he gave us the book, we read the book. This might have been 1974. And he said, you have to give the book back to me. I'm not giving it to you. I just want you to read it. We both read it. And it was like, why do you want us to give it back? He said, because you'll never see it again.
Yeah.
This is a book that no one wants you to read, especially the Catholic Church. These were the missing scrolls. How did he get his hands on it? I don't know. But David had his ways. He always would say that. I'd say, how did you get that? I have my ways. I have back channels, But he delved into spirituality. I mean, when he found out that we were Buddhists, it was something that we shared because he had delved into Buddhism. He didn't become a Buddhist, but he studied.
I think the key, a key for David was this. He was constantly inquisitive, wasn't he?
Curious.
His search, he had a spiritual search, and you can delve into just about any song of his career,
Yes.
Loving the Alien, Word on a Wing, Black Star, whatever. And there is this spiritual search of some sort going on, isn't there? And, there's a line in Station to Station, got to keep searching and searching,
Yes.
what will I be believing?
Yes.
And this seems to me a big
He was
part of
living
his...
that.
Yeah.
He was truly living that.
And in order to remember that one must develop beyond the point of one's own means, the song, Who Can I Be Now?
Yeah.
Oh my God, if that doesn't really bring the essence of what transformation is and a visionary, you cannot see the same thing if you remain the same person. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Perception must alter by your own being altered. If not, what you're perceiving is a memory.
Yeah.
That you're just coloring it to be something else. It's exactly the same memory. You haven't experienced anything, you haven't done anything to expand anything, so you're just coloring the same thing in a different color.
Yeah.
In order for you to understand that things change, they must be applied.
Yeah.
And once they're applied and your life changes, you're onto something. Don't let it go.
We should maybe just mention, don't worry, we shall go to the next question in just a minute. Many years after the years we've been talking about, because, it feels like we haven't covered everything, but it's great because you're back on again tomorrow, so we can talk about the things that we haven't talked about. But yeah, many years later, you were back with David on one of his most spiritual albums, Heathen, and you played on that wonderful track, Everyone Says Hi, which on the face of it sounds like quite a Everyone Says Hi song, but actually a deeply spiritual song, I think, about, possibly about bereavement, but about loss of some sort. Yeah, it was wonderful to have you back on that wonderful album as well. Yeah, we like that one. Anyway, thank you very much for your question. Do we have another one?
All right, Chris Jones, Chattanooga, Tennessee. I forgot to tell you my name. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So let's have another question.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Carlos, I was wondering if you could just say anything about your memories of two songs, Heroes and especially Look Back in Anger.
Heroes and Look Back in Anger.
I think that Heroes can't be separated from the actual experience of being in Berlin for the first time. Understand that as young people, for us to be near the Berlin Wall was like amazing. And so once we started recording this song, it was a total experience of being in the Hansa studio and understanding that we're making history. Why were we making history? Man, because at one point it was so dark in there because of those dark, dark velvet curtains. We asked them to please let the sun in. And when they did that, what we saw was the wall, the towers, and the gunners. And so we saw beyond that the whole rolls of all that barbed wire, and then just barren land, and then in the distance you see the demolished silhouette of buildings. Please close those windows again. The ability to think of inner retrospection and change, Heroes really addresses that. Hero really tells you that you can change. We can be heroes just for one day. It's not just a simple thing to say. It is something that you have to consider. You have to go through trial by fire. Oh, you could be a hero for one day if you get burned and you learn your lesson and you change and you alter and you transform. And then you do something about something instead of complaining. There's a lot of heavy stuff in that lyric. So yes, you could be heroes for one day if you rise to the challenge. This is not an illusion of possibilities. This is the reality of your development in life. We can be heroes just for one day is exactly that. You must overcome. You must do it. You've got to try. You've got to overcome. Being by the Berlin Wall was essential for us to feel that this song had meaning, that this song could be an anthem, that this song can represent the past, the future, and the ability for us to have a human resilience that can actually have a human revolution. The ability for us to morph into a being that's greater than the one that we were when we got here. That's a hero, not to anyone else, but to yourself. Why don't you claim being a hero and rescue yourself? And you could be that hero just for one day. And that's my interpretation.
Yeah. And what was the, Look Back in Anger was the other song you singled out. That's a, you have a terrific
the only thing I
guitar
can look back
part.
in anger is like I ripped through that solo. He said, take a solo. I gave a rhythm solo that I was just blistering those. Quite honestly, we wanted to do two things. I wanted to do a song that was like 122 beats per minute. Why? I had Dennis Davis. Man, if you ever listen to the drummer, 1, 2, 3, 4, that song starts out at 100 miles an hour. It never stopped. It's just this train that just like goes through all the posts. It goes through all the barricades. It goes through everything. Carlos, take a solo. One more time. Who the hell takes a rhythm guitar solo? It was a great song. I love that rhythm guitar solo. It was one of the first times I was able to do that. I'm going to say this, and it's not an ego trip. I really impressed myself. Is that just an ego trip?
That does it. So do we have another question? Oh, it's a kind of a draw.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
You can come next.
Just for one day.
Don't you worry. Yeah, you're next.
Hey, this is perhaps less deep than some of the other questions, but I was lucky enough to see David play quite a few times from '76 onwards until 2004. And one thing that became apparent to me is that him and the band always seemed to be having a lot of fun. And I just wondered if you could kind of share what was perhaps one of your funniest moments on stage with David.
No. I mean, look, aren't you getting to know us? Do you really think there's one funny moment above another?
Many.
There are so many funny moments. But let me tell you something about David Bowie's funny moments. Many a true word are spoken in jest, as Shakespeare duly said. I believe it to be so. So this is the way we can communicate. Did you just get that?
I'm married, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Bowie would never do any joke or anything at anyone's expense. But it doesn't mean that his wry British humor did not really cut across many lines.
Make sense of humor.
And don't forget, intellectual humor is deadly. And let's add a real component that we mustn't ever, ever forsake. Monty Python humor.
Faulty Towers humor.
Faulty Towers. Put all those things together and you have your answer.
Thank you very much, and no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Thank you.
Touche.
Good afternoon, Robin. Good afternoon, Carlos. I'm Chris from London. I've got a very simple question for you.
You look very familiar to me.
Maybe. Yeah, so my question, and you don't have to answer them together, you can answer them separately. So my question is, you've obviously recorded many albums with David Bowie. What is your favourite album? You can answer separately or together.
For me, it's Young Americans. I've done a couple of albums with him, but Young Americans sticks with me forever because it's a first. I had many firsts with David Bowie, and Young Americans for me because of the work that we didn't expect to get, number one. And then the creativity that we were allowed, it never goes away. And there's so many great songs on that album. You know, I hate to sound like I love it because I sang on it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's true. I don't know. But for me, Young Americans.
Yeah. For me, I think Scary Monsters. And the reason that I like Scary Monsters, thanks. Everybody else didn't like it, or what? Let's think that after the Berlin Trilogy, with all that slow symphonic music, oh my God, man. I mean, I get it. But we wanted to bust out, man, the damn trio. We did let's understand, the trilogy had this concept that we all grew up with. Nobody listens to the B-side. Everybody listens to the A side of an album, and that's where all the hits will be found. Every once in a while, you would flip over an album and listen to the B-side. Oh my goodness, shows on, if you wanted to hear the whole album and the B-side, you'd have to listen to the radio at 12 o'clock at night. Remember? Midnight or some obscure moment. Man, the damn trio kicked it for the side A of all those three albums. But who got all the publicity? Brian Eno and the whole, that whole soundscape. I get it. But damn, after three albums, we were like chomping at the bit. Oh, come on, 122 beats per minute. Man, with Scary Monsters, when we got to that studio and we were like, let us just take off the reins. Scary Monsters was, for me, just great. Up the hill backwards when he, when he went there, he did the whole thing. It was so funny. He asked this Japanese interpreter to interpret the lyrics. Was it Up the Hill
that's
Backwards,
right.
maybe?
It's, Michi Hirota, who came in to do that. Yeah,
and he tried to actually, you can't sing that. Some things do not translate, especially syllable for syllable. And so you get this person, don't sing it, just recite it. Nobody understood what the hell it meant. But the fury and the intention was evident. Who cares what they said? It's Bowie, and he's doing something outrageous. And you all accepted it, like that medicine you're not supposed to take that you took because your mama said it's good for you. But in essence, Scary Monsters allowed us to be the damn trio at full force. And David, oh man, he loved it. And so for me, Station to Station was great, and all those records were great. But after the trilogy, we needed a release. And for us, Scary Monsters was it.
And such great Ashes to Ashes, Fashion, the title track, such great songs on there.
He wanted another Fame, and so when I did the arrangement for Fashion, I was trying to give Fashion the type of caliber and essence that Fame had. I mean, it worked out in a different way, but he still had that feeling of, let's go back to the greatest thing that we've ever done and, put this album together. And so he trusted us to be able to put those tracks together, and then the overdubs that came in, and his lyric and vocal range. Oh, man, it was just wonderful. So I think for me,
That would be the one.
Yeah, Scary Monsters.
Now, I'm getting the, I told you about it, I'm getting the, I'm quite, but there's a gentleman here who's been waiting very patiently for the microphone, so we got time for one more? Thank you, Holly. Hooray, thank you very much for your question, that was a great question. So, it's got to be the last question, I'm afraid, for now.
Carlos and Robin, it's been an absolute privilege to hear you talk about the soundtrack of my youth, actually. And obviously, we're here to talk about David, but not forgetting the fantastic Luther Vandross as well. You know, I've got a big birthday next year, born in '63. The soundtrack of my youth started with that song behind you there, and I remember seeing that performed on Soul Train. And I revisited that, you know, watching it through YouTube fairly recently. So my question is really, were you there on that night when David was singing Golden Years on Soul Train? And I think he was the first white artist to sing on Soul Train.
Yeah, yeah.
No. Thank you.
Shortest answer I've ever given in my life. But concerning Golden Years, and since we're finishing this all off, Golden Years for Robin and I mean the celebration of 50 years of marriage. And in rock and roll, that would be about 155 years of marriage. But Golden Years is one of those songs that has that doo-wop quality, that has a certain sensibility that nobody's going to say no to it. It's not offensive. It talks about a greater time. It talks about prosperity. It talks about a lot of things. And so Golden Years ended up being one of those songs that everybody likes. When you want to do a greatest hits, there's no reason why you wouldn't include Golden Years. The sentiment behind the song really says a lot, and I think that David understood that, as you can see evidently when he puts out compilation albums and things like that. Fame is up there, but so is Golden Years. And so for us, having been together so long, actually 51 years, I don't want to be queued up later on to find out. One missing year. But Golden Years really took on a lot, you know, for us as our lives continue on and on and on. Yeah. That's a long, golden anniversary, golden anything is worthy of being cherished again.
I cherish
And so,
thank you so
that
much.
song means a lot to all of us.
It's been great to ask a question. I couldn't let the opportunity pass me by. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we've said, Robin and Carlos are going to be back tomorrow on another panel, I think with Gail and with Donnie McCaslin, talking to my very good friend Kevin Cann, who's going to be doing some of the panels tomorrow. So we'll have plenty more opportunity to hear some more of their stories about their golden years. But for the meantime, I'm sure you'll agree they've entertained us wonderfully this afternoon. Thank you so much for everything. Robin Clark and Carlos Alomar.